Hello everybody, it's Mr. Robbie here. Before I begin, I want to tell you what this video will cover so there are no surprises. This video is about the murder of Renee Nicole Good by an ICE agent. And it's also about something else that happened the same day in the same city, something that has received far less attention but matters just as much. On that same day, federal immigration agents were involved in violent confrontations near a public high school in Minneapolis, where people were tackled, chemical irritants like tear gas and pepper spray were used, and the situation became so dangerous that the school district canceled classes for the rest of the week. I'll talk about that too. I won't show you any videos of either incident, not because they don't exist, but because they are already widely available, and replaying violent footage over and over doesn't serve the public or the people harmed. I've seen the videos. I'm sure you've seen the videos. Journalists have seen them. Independent analysts have seen all of the videos. We don't need to replay them to understand what happened. What does need to happen is that all the facts, legal, factual, and evidentiary, are put together coherently so people can clearly see who is telling the truth and who is lying. This is about the killing, and yes, I am calling it a murder, of Renee Nicole Good, an unarmed U.S. citizen shot and murdered by an ICE agent in Minnesota. And I'm going to say something plainly, without hedging. The administration is lying, not as rhetoric, not as opinion, as a conclusion based on evidence, contradictions, and deliberate obstruction. This is not just my conclusion. Major mainstream reporting has reached the same point, that while there are still things we don't know, it became clear very quickly that official statements about what happened were false. Let's start with the law, because law matters, even when the government wishes it didn't. In 1985, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Tennessee v. Garner that law enforcement cannot legally use deadly force against a person who is fleeing or attempting to leave unless that person poses an immediate and significant threat of death or serious bodily harm to the officer or others. Deadly force is a constitutional last resort. It's not allowed because someone disobeys an order. It's not allowed because someone wants to leave. And it's not allowed because an officer feels uncomfortable or disrespected. That ruling has been settled law for decades. There's something else that must be said because it keeps being ignored deliberately. Every law enforcement officer in the United States has a legal duty to disobey illegal orders. That's not a slogan, it's not activism, it's the law. I was just following orders is not a defense. It was policy is not a defense. No one told me to stop is not a defense. Those excuses were rejected decades ago. Officers are required by law to evaluate whether an order is lawful, and if it isn't, they must refuse it. They are also required to search their conscience. If an action is legal on paper but clearly reckless, immoral, or foreseeably deadly, the officer is still responsible for the outcome. Your badge does not suspend the Constitution, and your job does not erase your conscience. Let's talk about what is actually shown in the videos without showing the videos. Renee Nicole Good was unarmed. The bystanders were unarmed. They had whistles, but the ICE agents, they had masks and guns. Renee was not screaming, she was not threatening, she was not violent. She was actually verbally expressing empathy toward the agent shortly before she was murdered. Independent analysts outside the government agree on a central point. She was leaving or attempting to leave. She wasn't charging, she wasn't attacking, and she was not weaponizing her vehicle. And this matters enormously because attempting to leave is not a crime. Being commanded to do something doesn't automatically make it lawful. Without a traffic stop, a cited crime, or probable cause, a person is within their rights to remain in their vehicle and leave a voluntary encounter. A shouted command does not create legal authority, and attempting to leave a voluntary encounter is not a crime. This false premise has been stated explicitly by elected officials. Congressman Wesley Hunt said this, verbatim: "The bottom line is this: when a federal officer gives you instructions, you abide by them, but then you get to keep your life." And it is clear that she tried to use her vehicle as a weapon, mow over an ICE agent, and now she is dead. That statement is legally false and morally dangerous. In the United States, obedience is not a substitute for lawful authority. Police and federal agents don't have the power to issue unlimited commands on pain of death. A command does not become lawful because it's shouted, and compliance is not required when there is no lawful detention, no cited crime, and no probable cause. Saying obey or die is not law enforcement, it's authoritarianism. Here is another critical fact, visible on video and confirmed by analysis. The ICE agent placed himself in front of her vehicle at least twice, blocking her path. Law enforcement officers are not legally permitted to create their own danger and then claim self-defense when that danger materializes. If an officer steps in front of a moving vehicle, the officer has created the risk. You don't get to manufacture a threat and then kill someone because of it. A physician who was a witness on the scene offered medical aid. ICE refused it. When told the person was a physician, an ICE agent reportedly screamed, "I don't care." And I saw the video on that. It's clear. The agent claimed medics were already on scene. They were not visible anywhere in the video. Emergency medical services were delayed at least 15 minutes. They were forced to park blocks away. They weren't allowed direct access, and they could not bring a stretcher. Renee Good was eventually carried from her vehicle by hand, like an object, like a sack of potatoes, to an ambulance waiting far away. When medics finally arrived, it was too late. This is not just morally indefensible. It raises serious legal and ethical questions. The ICE agent who killed Renee Nicole Good has been identified as Jonathan Ross. About 6 months ago, Ross was seriously injured in another violent encounter involving a civilian. He was dragged by a vehicle and required multiple stitches. The government has publicly acknowledged that the incident affected him emotionally and that he took time off to recuperate. The administration itself has leaned on this prior injury to explain his later reaction. That matters because when the government points to prior trauma to explain an officer's behavior, they are already admitting trauma. I'm not speculating here. I am inferring from their own statements and conduct. A violent injury, emotional impact, time off, and heightened sensitivity to perceived threats, especially involving vehicles, is textbook post-traumatic stress. If an officer is operating with unresolved PTSD, that officer should not be placed back into a high-stress, armed enforcement role where split-second decisions mean life or death. Returning someone in that condition to the street is not bravery, it's institutional irresponsibility. And in this case, that irresponsibility had deadly consequences. The administration claims this was self-defense. The videos don't support that. They claim Renee Good was a domestic terrorist, part of a broad left-wing network. But they haven't produced any evidence of that. No organization name, no leader, no structure, no membership list, no communications, no charges, nothing. Independent reporting has noted that official claims of violent rioters and a weaponized vehicle were contradicted by video evidence showing no riot, no rioters, and no evidence of terrorism. Calling a citizen a terrorist after killing them without proof is not law enforcement, it's constructing a narrative. Local officials have been denied access to evidence. Documents have been withheld. Oversight has been blocked. And that's not transparency. That's a cover up. And it's provable by the government's actions alone. Now we need to talk about what else happened that same day. Federal immigration agents were in Minneapolis as part of a massive enforcement surge. Later that day, near Roosevelt High School, federal agents were involved in violent confrontations with civilians. I've seen the videos showing agents tackling people and deploying chemical irritants like tear gas or pepper spray, and I won't show those videos. They're already widely available, and I don't believe that repeatedly broadcasting images of this violence, especially near a school, serves any public good. What matters is this. Classes were not canceled simply because ICE was in the city. Minneapolis public schools canceled classes for the rest of the week after the confrontations near the school occurred because the situation had become unsafe. That decision was made after people were assaulted, after chemical agents were used, and after federal activity escalated to the point where students and staff could not be protected. That is an established fact. So, when I say the administration is lying, I'm not guessing. I'm comparing what they say to what the videos show, what the witnesses say, what independent analysts conclude, and to what they are refusing to release. All of those things do not match. That is the definition of a lie. Renee Nicole Good was unarmed. She wasn't attacking anyone. She wasn't committing a crime. She was attempting to leave. Under Supreme Court law, she should be alive. Instead, she's dead. And the state is trying to justify it with labels, obstruction, and silence. I won't accept that. Demand the full public release of all evidence. Put that demand in writing so that it exists on record, and you can continue asking about this when the news moves on. And you can pay attention to who insists on transparency and who doesn't.